Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt, and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Stress Podcast. My name is Julia Arndt. I'm your host, and I'm super excited to welcome our next podcast guest to the show today, and it is Tony Wang. Hi, Tony. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Julia. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's my pleasure to have you. Tony, I always start my podcast with three very simple questions just to warm up and to get pick people up a little bit on where we're at. And so the three questions are: where are you located? What time is it? And what have you been up to this morning before jumping on the podcast?
Oh, tough ones. Sure. So I'm in San Diego, California, a little north, Lake Hodges, so 30 minutes of San Diego. It is 10:12 right now in the morning. Just started my day. And so far, I got out of bed, played with my 3-year-old daughter. Always try to get some playtime in the mornings. Did my morning routine, chatted with my team, my CPA, and then made some avocado toast. And now chatting with you.
Very nice. What's your morning routine entail?
Yeah, so it's really simple. I used to have this long list of morning routines, goals, visualizations, affirmations, meditation, all these things. Now it's just two things. It's a physical activity. So I'll do something called a flow training that I learned from Mike Chang. It's I just do 5 to 10 minutes of breath work or qigong exercises, body weight strength training, just to kind of warm up my body, get some energy going for the day. And then I do something which I call mental alchemy, and it's related to the work that I do with my clients. It's a psycho-spiritual process to help clear out any lingering emotions or thoughts that are kind of just in my mind, and to help me get more clarity for the day and just kind of like a reset button for my mind. And since doing that, I haven't done meditation. I found this to be more effective. So it's kind of the one thing I do every single day to prep me for the day and to just like clear out anything that's bothering me or just kind of snagging my mind.
And do you do that just like mentally, or do you write that down, or how does that process really work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, I learned these, and I can talk more about this later. But I learned it one-on-one working with coaches, because this is it's a method that's evolved over time after many years of testing, and before it's only available through one-on-one sessions with certified practitioners. That's how I started, and then I'm like, wow, this works really great. So then I started doing it by myself, which is something everyone can do. However, it's kind of mentally taxing, because you're asking yourself questions, and then you're going inside, you're feeling the answers to these questions, and you're verbalizing them, and then you have to ask yourself the next question, and there's this logical flow chart of what to do. So I started doing that for a while, and it's just a little more difficult doing it by yourself than having someone guide you. And now I've developed an app, which I'm releasing soon, that basically is a virtual guide, so that people are able to have someone virtually guide them, and be able to do it as many times as they want, whenever they want.
Very cool. I'm excited. What's the app going to be called?
It's called Mindflow. That's the working title right now.
Okay, great. Amazing. Tony, tell us a little bit more about you, about how you came to do what you do today, and maybe also what your past was like.
Sure. So I guess my journey started over 10 years ago, when doctors told me that they might have to remove my colon.
Okay.
So I was 21. I moved to San Francisco for a summer internship. Didn't even get to work my first day when I felt this sharp pain in my gut. Had to go to the hospital, and I found out I had ulcerative colitis, which they say there's no cure. It's a chronic illness, and they don't even know what causes it. They just know that it was related to stress. And that made a lot of sense because growing up, I wouldn't have said I was stressed, but I was suppressing a lot of emotions. It was just,
Mhm.
I never learned the right way to process emotions, to express them. So I just like bottled a lot of things up. And especially when I had big decisions like work related at the time, it was what was I going to do after I graduated college? It kind of just like those things would kind of eat away at me without even me
Right.
knowing it, completely unconscious. And I guess it just kind of turned into a physical illness. So after I got out of the hospital, after they gave me medications and I was back to normal, it really got me thinking about just life and how precious health and life are.
Mhm.
So I decided that I wasn't going to pursue chemistry, which is what I studied in college. And
Mhm.
instead, I was going to become an entrepreneur
Right.
because life's too short to just, do something that I didn't really want to do, that I kind of felt pressure to do because of my parents. And that was really the start of my own journey. And for the first year and a half, I sucked at it. I made like $1,000 to $2,000 a month working full time, which was barely enough to support my living expenses at the time in Los Angeles. And I was working a lot, 40, 50 hours a week, 6, 7 days a week, so much that I had a relapse
Mhm.
of my illness. I had to go to the hospital for a month this time,
Mhm.
just because of all the stress, all the overwhelm, feeling like
Mhm.
a failure, like I can't get this to
Mhm.
work, even though I'm working so hard. What are my parents going to think? What are my friends going to think? Just
Mhm.
all those things kind of accumulating. So after I got out of the hospital that time, luckily I was fine. They didn't have to remove my colon. Um,
Mhm.
I really started taking this seriously. I saw it as a sign that I needed to address something that I've been avoiding. So
Mhm.
that's when I looked into I guess alternative or deeper methods for healing. So not just physical or just kind of like the mainstream things people think when they think about healing, like
Right.
medication or diet. I looked into spiritual emotional healing. And
Mhm.
that's when I discovered the work of a Serbian clinical psychologist and spiritual researcher named Dr. Slavinsky. And he had these fascinating books on ways to remove emotional problems,
Mhm.
sometimes physical problems, lifelong problems in just minutes. So people would be depressed, they would have these traumas, they would have these phobias, fears, anxiety, whatever. And he had these processes to help them um, just remove it. Like he called it, he used the word removal, and it was such a new concept for me because I'd studied self help, personal development, and they never talk about removing problems. It's just
Mhm.
like how do you like improve? How do you cope with things?
Accepting and integrating, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was really
Interesting.
curious, and I started working with a coach. And with this coach, after about 3 or 4 months, I made a ton of progress internally, just clearing out a lot of the stuff that I didn't even know was there.
Mhm.
And I never like even thought about going to therapy or anything. And and on the outside, it allowed me to create financial success. So my income jumped up to 5 figures a month. I finally felt like I had breathing room, that okay, like I can actually do this. I can actually build a successful business off of this. And then
Mhm.
over the next couple of years, I was really focused on building my digital advertising company, grew that to 8 figures a year, and lots of ups and downs with that, even more
Mhm.
stress in a lot of cases.
For
But
sure.
finally I reached a point where I felt like I reached my goals, I reached my financial goals, I was engaged, and I just felt like I had everything I wanted in life, but I still wasn't happy. I was still overworking, I still was comparing myself to others, I still couldn't be present around my fiance or my friends a lot of times. I had minor health issues here and there, so I felt like something was still missing.
Mhm.
And that's when I decided to go deeper and just go even deeper and look at what else am I avoiding in life. And I actually went to a ceremony in Costa Rica, and worked with the plant medicine called Iboga, which I don't know if you've heard of.
No, I have not heard of it. No.
It's you've probably heard of ayahuasca.
Right.
So it's similar to that, but
Okay.
it takes you inside of your own consciousness. So facing my own thoughts, my mental patterns, my fears, just like face to face. You can't escape it. 10 hours of that. It's not for the faint of heart. I honestly wouldn't recommend it to anyone unless you really feel called to it.
Okay.
Because it really just, shoves that in your face. You have to confront what you've been avoiding. But afterwards, it was the most blissful, peaceful I've ever felt. And what I realized from that was, well, first of all, like something that everyone says, but it took me a while to get, that happiness doesn't come from the outside, that success is more so, how you feel rather than what you have. And this whole time I've been chasing accomplishments, chasing what wanting to accumulate more money, have certain status, all to make myself, feel good. When the real answer was, it's none of that. You can feel good just by feeling good, by having a clear mind, by, processing your emotions. So that was one of the lessons. And then the other lesson was that all these processes that I learned over the years to help me process, which I did on and off, but Iboga was basically doing all of those on steroids, just making me confront a lot of the suppressed emotions and thoughts and the beliefs, and just doing that within a 10-hour time frame. But it just made me realize that anyone can do this. Anyone can have this breakthrough of reaching to a place of having a very clear mind, and not just be at the control of all these automatic, impulsive thoughts and feelings. So anyways, after that, that's when I decided, all right, I'm not really interested in digital advertising anymore. It's not really aligned with what I want to do. And what I really want to do is help others make the same breakthroughs, help others who are struggling, who feel like they're overwhelmed by their problems, who are stressed, feel blocked, be able to get unstuck and move forward and find success for themselves. And that's what I'm doing now.
So cool. Very cool. And this is very interesting. And what are so I know that you work basically with people on obviously clearing their emotional blocks or removing them. Maybe you say remove as well. And what are the 3 to 5 maybe main areas where people are feeling blocked?
That's that's a tough one.
Can you break that down, or is it like super different from person to person?
I would say there's definitely common issues that people come to me for. So a big one is money. People feel like they just don't have enough money, but that's not really, that's like the symptom and not the actual cause. A lot of it can go down, if we trace it back, the block could actually be just their beliefs towards money, their attitudes towards having money. So some clients I work with, they have this belief that having money is bad, it's shameful, that rich people are evil, they're greedy, they're superficial. And as long as they hold those beliefs, which they may have picked up in their childhood due to religion, their parents, whatever, as long as they hold those beliefs, then it's going to be very difficult for them to consciously work towards making more money, because anytime they get close, and then they're going to be the type of person who has more than enough money, their unconscious kicks in and says, hey, you're not an evil person, you're not greedy, like you shouldn't do this. So those types of inner conflicts do come up quite a bit. Some other ones would be imposter syndrome, feeling like I don't have enough knowledge, I'm not qualified to be serving others in the way that I am. I need another certification. I see all these other people, they're more successful than me. Just feeling not enough in that sense. Some other ones feeling just overwhelmed by how much work they have. Procrastination, that's a big one. Feeling lack of motivation and not being able to get myself to, do what I set out to do. Making this plan, getting motivated, and then after a couple of days or a couple of weeks, just falling off and going back into my own habits.
Super interesting. So I want to hone in with you actually a little bit more today on the money mindset thing, because it's a very resonating topic for me at the moment. I've been working actually through money mindset blocks myself, and I've been talking a little bit more about it, and I think people really enjoy that. So I think because a lot of people do have money mindset blocks and things, and I think it's really really powerful to talk about it. Um, just as a side note, I don't know if you know her, you probably do. I've been reading the book Rich as Fuck by Amanda Frances.
I've
Have
heard
you
of the
heard of
book.
the
I
book?
haven't read it. Yeah.
So
I
that's
love the
kind of,
title.
yeah, it is. It's a very powerful book, and I've actually in the process of already reading it for a second time. And she has a lot of journaling prompts, and I'm working through a lot of journaling prompts around like money mindset blocks. And I think one of the biggest realizations that I had, which was really interesting, was I actually listened to the book the first time in December. I was traveling in Mexico for 4 weeks with my partner, and I was listening to the book at kind of at the beach, and I was like, I have no money mindset issues. I'm doing great, right? I'm here in Mexico, and everything is great. And then I had a really successful month in January, and entrepreneurs say, which is something that I don't want to believe anymore, but from an entrepreneurial perspective, and I think what a lot of people are afraid of as well, going into that kind of entrepreneurial journey are these like roller coaster months, right? People always say, oh, it's
Mm,
totally normal that there's one month where you'd make a ton of money and there's maybe 2 or 3 months where you don't make any money at all.
mhm.
And I think I was about on that belief for a while until I've been, dealing more with money mindset beliefs and blocks and so on. And so, sure enough, I'm going into February, and it's kind of my roller coaster months where not a lot of business is coming through. And so all of a sudden, I'm like, oh wow, I have all of these money mindset limiting beliefs, and all of these blocks, which is why I'm listening to the book for the second time now, because I realized I actually do have these blocks and things that I want to work through. And Amanda Frances has a very spiritual approach as well to how she thinks about money management and mindset. And so when someone is coming to you and they say, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, or maybe even an employee, because I know that even employees, obviously want to make more money and oftentimes burn out in the process of striving for that promotion and for that compensation increase and so on. Where do you start?
Yeah, great question. And you're absolutely right. A lot of employees or a lot of entrepreneurs, employees, they feel so overwhelmed sometimes with what they have to do that it's hard for them to see clearly on the actual next steps. So the first thing I do is just try to get the client to a place of clarity so that they're able to see their situation clearly without the filters of their limiting beliefs or their negative emotions. So if someone feels like they don't have enough money, or right now they're late on bills, they're not making enough income, maybe they just lost part of their business or a job or something. There's always an emotional reaction that goes with it. So it's, this is a problem for me because reality isn't the way that I want it to be. But more so than that, I have this feeling inside of me. I feel, it could be anything, frustrated. I feel grief, depressed. I feel insecure, whatever it
Right.
is.
Kind of goes back
So
into that imposter syndrome, right? Because I think a lot of people then feel like I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy enough of making that kind of money that I would like to make.
right, right. Yeah. So, it's just this whole web of different
Mm-hmm.
beliefs, problems,
Mm-hmm.
emotions, thoughts. All it's just very messy. So the
Mm-hmm.
first thing I do is just get them to clear all those so that they're looking at their situation as it is and not through the filters, because once they can see it clearly, they can come up with new ideas that maybe they haven't thought of before because they were literally blinded by some of the beliefs they had or some of the heavy emotions they were feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I always start. I always ask them to tell me the problem in their own words. And usually they'll just ramble on, and I just have them make it more and more concise until we can get it to one sentence. So let's say the problem is, um, I have too much debt right now. Let's say that's like what someone's going through. And then I ask, okay, and when you think about having too much debt, what emotion does that bring up? And a lot of times, that's kind of, they have to really think about it because they're not used to just being aware, being conscious of their emotional reactions. But problems always trigger some sort of compulsive, automatic, negative reaction. We're kind of like Pavlov's dogs in that sense, where when there's a problem, there's an emotional reaction that we feel. So let's say they feel, let's say they feel fear, and they say, okay, I feel fear when I think about being in debt. So then we'll work through the mental alchemy process to dissolve that fear and basically remove that fear so they can think about being in debt, and that fear is gone. So it's not like money just automatically went into their bank account at the end of our session. Like their situation's the same, but now they don't feel the fear, or they feel a lot less fear, depending on, just how much it really reduces. And then now it's like, okay, now I can take action. I can do this, I can do that. Whereas before it was just kind of overwhelming and paralyzing for them.
Yeah, so interesting. And so, from your experience, do people need to go like, are there multiple, because you were saying, right, it's like a web of like thoughts and beliefs and fears and problems. Does it really boil down to that one thing, or is your experience that there's actually multiple parts that need to be cleared in order to really kind of open the gateway for them to receive what they would like to receive?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a couple parts. It's not like, we do this and then they're going to be a millionaire the next year. It's not it's not that effective. So there's the emotional charge component, and that's the part that just makes it a problem. That's that part where when emotional charge is intense enough, it's hard to function. So sometimes, you go through a heartbreak, you separate from someone, or someone close to you dies. You're feeling so much grief that you can't function in your day-to-day life. So that's the part we're removing for people who are going through really intense emotional challenges. And even if it's not intense, even if it's something like, I feel overwhelmed by my work assignments, that overwhelmed feeling is still kind of blocking you from just doing what you need to do. It's probably causing you to procrastinate, ironically. But everything that kind of bothers you have some sort of emotional component. And then once remove that, you feel better. But that doesn't guarantee that the problem doesn't come back, that like 2 weeks down the line, you get another bill in the mail, and then it doesn't just re-trigger that stress. So to do that, we have to work on a deeper level, which is on the level of unconscious identities. And this is something that I love talking about. I love working with clients with, because I feel not enough people talk about this. A lot of people are just like, oh yeah, just change your mindset, think positively, believe in yourself, work hard, and then everything's going to work out your way. But we know that if that's really how it was, everyone would be really, doing
Totally.
what they love and be millionaires. So we have these unconscious identities that we've developed since childhood, for the purpose of achieving some sort of goal. So for instance, as I'm talking on this podcast, my identity is, let's just say, podcast guest. And my goal is to educate or entertain, or just, give information to the listeners on this topic. Later, I'm going to hang out with my daughter. I'm going to be in the identity of a father. My goal is to just spend quality time with her. Later, I'm going to go to a music festival. I'm going to be in the identity of a party person. My goal is to have fun and just let loose, right? So none of these things are who I really am, but they're roles that I take on temporarily to achieve some sort of goal. And we all do this. We all shift in and out of identities all day, but sometimes we get stuck in an identity. So we might get stuck in an identity that's not conducive to our goals. So like if I want to really make some business breakthroughs this year, but I'm stuck in the identity of a party person, I'm going to be distracted. I'm not going to want to work. It's going to be hard for me to do what I need to do to take my business to the next level. So, so this is kind of like the root cause of all problems, in my opinion. where once you are able to identify what stuck identities you have that's creating the problem and release it, meaning be able to consciously take on another identity instead of default to that one that you have been, then you're able to just do what you need to do, assume the correct identity for what you're trying to achieve.
Mhm. You described that so well. It's very interesting, and I'm really glad that you're bringing this up. I've actually been working with a healer for over 2 years now. I've had many, many sessions with him because I was going through a lot of emotional things in like the last 2 years. And we do a lot of that actually. We clear unconscious identities. And I had never heard about that before. And you're the first podcast guest to ever bring this up, because I'm still kind of going through that process of learning that, right? And kind of understanding that in myself. So it's very interesting. And I'm really glad that you're bringing that up, because I do believe that there's a lot of unconscious, as I've learned through myself, right? Unconscious identities that are holding us back. So when we talk about unconscious identities, we oftentimes go into obviously the past, right? Like our parents, like the identities that we learned from them, or just things that we saw or things that we believed in. Do you then talk with your clients a lot about kind of those past experiences in order to clear them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is no. We don't go into the past in terms of analysis. It's not like a therapy session where we're like, when did your problem first start? Of course, a lot of past stuff does come up, and we address those as they do. But the idea is, and you're absolutely right, identities, they do get created in the past, we get stuck in them, and now they're affecting us in the present moment. But at the end of the day, all we have is this present moment. The past is just these thoughts, these feelings that we have about something that happened before that we experience in the present. The future is just something we're, thinking, imagining, worrying about in the present moment. So it's really about just being present and seeing what's coming up now. What identity do you feel like you're feeling now as you get triggered by, whatever it is, whatever issue or challenge that you want to resolve. But to kind of clarify that a little bit, how identities get stuck in the first place is a decision that we made when we were younger, or just at some earlier point, and that we just decide to carry out, and we've forgotten about it. So let's say, for instance, I was 6 years old, or I was 12 years old. I was doing a school play, and I used to be, the center of attention, a star, and I loved taking on that identity because it got me praise. Like, the goal is to get praise. And then one day at school, I messed up my lines at the school play, and now everyone's laughing at me, and now I feel embarrassed. I'm humiliated. So I have this new goal, and the new goal is to avoid embarrassment, avoid humiliation. So to achieve that new goal, I take on this identity of a shy person. And in my present day life, I'm not humiliated, I'm not embarrassed because I'm too quiet, I'm always in the background because I've taken on that identity. But now I also realize that shy person is hurting me. Let's say I'm trying to find a partner, and it's hurting me in dating, it's hurting me with promotions, because I'm getting passed at work. So now I see that this shy person identity is actually counterproductive, and I want to release it to take on the appropriate identity for those goals I want to achieve.
So it does sound then like you also need to actually create new habits and take on new characteristics when you're clearing these identities, right? Because it's a great example. So when I think about, that shy person that releases that old identity of being shy, obviously a result of that clearing, hopefully, is that he or she is not that shy anymore and actually steps up and starts to speak up. And so it's like a whole process of also creating a new identity.
Yeah. So I would say the work that I do, it's not about creating any identities. It's about removing the stuck ones and allowing yourself to go into the appropriate identity.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean, and I just want to clarify, it doesn't mean you're automatically going to gain the skills of that new
Right.
identity. It's not like the Matrix where, Neo learns Kung Fu by downloading it to his brain.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have this identity of a shy person and I release that and, allow myself to take on the identity of a confident person, it just means that in social situations, I probably won't experience like the nervousness, the tension I used to, but it doesn't mean I'm going to be a better storyteller. It doesn't mean I'm going to be, have better vocal tonality or other things that we associated with confidence that are more skill related. So someone's still going to have to take action to kind of develop those skills, but now they're doing from a place of, oh, I feel like good about this rather than, oh, I'm just a shy person who's, kind of faking it
Trying to
by acting
force.
confident. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what
Mm-hmm.
imposter syndrome can be a lot of times when you're not internally aligned with your external behaviors.
Mm, so interesting. And so, through that clearing and removing, is your experience that people are not getting re-triggered, or they do still get re-triggered? And then what do they do when they do get triggered again?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's hard to say because,
Mm-hmm.
problems are so complex. They're different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in a lot of cases, and it depends on just how long we've worked for. If the longer we work for on a topic, the more charge we can remove on that topic. So it's less likely they'll be re-triggered. But if they
Mm-hmm.
do get re-triggered, we just work on whatever that new trigger is, because it's usually something slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to think about problems like an iceberg. It's like a big iceberg. There's a little bit on the surface and most of it's underneath. So we can melt a little bit of the iceberg. That's what we do in the clearing process. But then there might
Mm-hmm.
be more and it comes up. We clear that, comes up, clear that. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually there's just no more problem. There's no more automatic reaction to something in the external world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And I always think that this process requires a lot of awareness, right? You kind of need to be aware what's going on. You need to be courageous to talk about those heavy emotions that you sometimes experience. Do you use intuition to maybe pinpoint sometimes things that people are not aware about, or is it people usually more already in a very self-aware state?
Yeah, that's another great question. I kind of get the whole gamut of clients, the ones that have been doing mindfulness meditation, they've kind of already
Mm-hmm.
started this journey. They see really fast. They pick it up really fast, see results really fast because they're already aware of what's going on
Mm-hmm.
internally. But other
Mm-hmm.
people who just haven't been doing personal development or just haven't been as aware of their thoughts and feelings, it might take them a little longer. And the reason is we experience reality in the forms of four mind elements. So thoughts, images, emotions, and body sensations. Like if you really want to break it down, like an experience usually has one of those or all four of those
All of them.
things.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people, they're not aware of, how they feel about something. They're not aware of their body sensations. And I used to be like that, just very logical minded, very analytical, always in my head. So a lot of people, if they haven't been, if they don't have as much experience with feeling, then they're just going to tell me, reasons like what their thoughts are, their images that they
Mm-hmm.
see as we go through this process, and I have to kind of nudge them
Mm-hmm.
into, how does your body feel? And there's specific modalities for that too, where we alternate between thoughts and feelings, essentially to force people to feel a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
I find that for myself, at least, I've been able to just feel a lot more, like feel physically in my
Mm-hmm.
body as well as emotionally as a result of just cultivating this awareness over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how are there still things that come up for you? So is this a lifelong process, you think, or are there certain things that just need to be cleared and then you're kind of good to go?
Yeah, it's kind of both. So there's some
Mm-hmm.
issues where, I get
Mm-hmm.
really triggered by something
Mm-hmm.
and then I just clear that and then a similar thing happens again and then I just have no reaction to it. It's just like, okay, it's normal.
Mm.
But there's other things where, you know, I find myself continually working on. And like I said, it's a daily practice for me. Some days it's just like, okay, I feel like I got some resolution. Other days it's like something huge. I'm like, whoa, like
Mm-hmm.
that was crazy. Like I didn't know that was there. And it, you know, it just feels like this huge burden was lifted. But for me, it's really a spiritual practice at the end of
Cool.
the day, because it's
Mm-hmm.
just getting rid of layers of the ego, getting rid of like, you know, these emotional attachments and resistances so I can experience more and more of my true self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the other thought that I had earlier when you were talking about kind of working through these emotions was emotions always come up, right? We will never get rid of an
Mm-hmm.
emotion because there's always thoughts and feelings involved with our day-to-day practices and experiences. And obviously, there will be new experiences and new things that are happening to us that trigger other parts in us, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and we're not trying to remove emotions entirely. Like it's not a
Mm-hmm.
lobotomy, as I always say. It's not like we're trying to remove fear so you never feel fear anymore. Because if you're
Mhm.
in the middle of a road and a car comes at you, like you want to feel fear so you can get the hell out of the road.
Right, exactly.
But if you know, if you're a leader, an author, a speaker, you might not want to feel fear when you're speaking in front of others because it's counterproductive to that goal. So we
Mhm.
can address fear in that very specific scenario.
Mhm, mhm. And so back to the money mindset. Have you had the experience that people work through it maybe even multiple times, right, through different layers, and then they're kind of cleared and open to receiving? Or do you see it even in the money mindset work as well that some people never get there, never get to the
Um,
goals, never like maybe get to what they're trying to achieve?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I just started coaching last year. So I haven't worked
Mhm,
with someone, you know, for
mhm,
that long, and they haven't
mhm,
seen results. Usually after, like I'd say 3 or 4 sessions, it really makes some big breakthroughs.
mhm,
Um, but I would say, yeah, I would say if it doesn't work for someone, then they can try a different approach. In my experience, this works for about 95% of people. People with like severe depression or mental illnesses, they're just unable to do these processes.
mhm,
And sometimes people get to a place where they realize that the goals they had aren't really, you know, they don't really want them
mhm,
anymore. So that
mhm,
let's say someone had this big financial goal, but the reason was driven because they felt you know, not enough, or they felt like pressured, like they have to like succeed. And then after doing this clearing work, they realized, oh, I actually don't need that much money. I'm actually
mhm,
perfectly happy with this amount of money, and that's a
mhm,
lot more achievable. So, you know, in my book, that's a success as well.
mhm.
um, but to answer your question, yeah, everyone's different, so it's hard to
Totally.
say.
For sure. Yeah. And the mental alchemy process. I'm still very curious about that because I still feel like I haven't maybe fully grasped what it is, and maybe, and as you were saying, it's kind of a complex process, so it is kind of hard to grasp. Is there any way you can kind of showcase it a little bit to us to get a better understanding of what it actually is?
I can guide you through a process
Okay,
if you're brave and open to it,
let's
or I
do
can
it.
explain it. It would okay,
Okay.
cool. So yeah, so okay, great. So what would you like to work on? We can work on a problem, a limiting belief, a negative past experience, a goal. Just kind of like what do you feel is, you know, coming up for you that you want to clear?
A goal on money mindset.
Okay, and what is that goal?
The goal is to make $40,000 per month every month of the year.
Okay, and when you think about that, what negative reaction comes up?
Probably the imposter syndrome fear of like not being good enough to make that kind of money.
Okay, great. And how would you describe that? Like the would you say fear or doubt, or what's the
The
word?
emotions.
Yeah.
Doubt that it's possible.
Okay.
And also, yeah, mostly doubt and maybe like fear of not being good enough.
Okay. So we usually just start with one. So which one do you want to go with? Doubt or the fear? of not being good enough?
Fear.
Okay. Just taking some notes here.
Mhm.
Cool. So instead of that fear, what emotion would you like to feel instead?
The two words that come up for me are empowerment and abundance.
Okay.
So I'm feeling
So,
empowered and feeling abundant.
all right. And what would you like to go with if you were to
Just
do,
one.
yeah.
Abundant.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, so what we did there was just get to the emotional roots of this problem. We're not talking about, the 40K thing, but just this fear that you feel like it's blocking you, and then what you want to feel instead. And I'll explain why we go into that in just a bit. Okay, so to do this process, it's very straightforward. You're just going to, I'm going to have you close your eyes when you're ready, and I'm going to direct your attention to certain aspects of this problem. And you just follow my instructions and tell me what comes up for you. Just, you don't have to think too much about it. Usually it's a thought, an image, a body sensation, or a feeling. And you don't have to analyze it or anything. Just kind of say what comes up as you feel it, the first thing that comes up, or whatever you feel the most, and just flow through it. That's what we want to do. Just kind of flow through this.
Okay.
So let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, great. So when you feel this fear of not being good enough around making 40K a month, so just allow yourself to feel this fear and just tell me what comes up for you.
I feel anxiety in my stomach area.
Thank you. And now feel abundant as best as you can and tell me what comes up.
Still fear and anxiety.
Okay, thank you. And just allow yourself to feel this fear and tell me what comes up.
It feels a little bit more empty. So kind of just like a moment of not feeling anything in particular.
Thank you. And now feel abundant as best as you can and tell me what comes up.
It's hard to feel abundant.
Okay. And if you were to just pretend to feel abundant, like make yourself feel abundant, does anything come up?
A feeling of lightness and happiness.
Okay, thank you. And now let's go back to fear, feel fear, and tell me what comes up.
I don't feel the fear anymore.
Okay. And feel abundant and tell me what comes up.
I think the first thought and feeling is always like I don't really feel abundant.
That's okay. Thank you. And now, as best as you can, and this might sound a little strange, but just do it as best as you can. Feel fear and abundant at the same time, or just be aware of them at the same time. And as you do, take a deep inhale and exhale. And let me know when you're ready.
Okay. Ready.
Okay. And now, can you feel both of those feelings, the fear and abundant feeling, separately, or no?
I
Can you feel?
found it difficult to feel both at the same time
Okay.
as well, right? It's kind of hard to feel one or the other. Like I feel like my logical brain kicks in and says, well, you can't really feel both. And that's probably the point of this, right? you can't really feel fear and abundance at the same time.
So now can you, if you were to check in, can you feel fear separate from abundance? Like, are they two different emotions for you still?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we'll do another round. So go back to fear and just feel fear and tell me something about it.
It's kind of this like fiery feeling in my chest area as well.
Thank you. And now feel abundant and tell me something about it.
It makes me feel confident.
Thank you. And now feel fear. Tell me what comes up.
That the feeling in my chest is less strong.
Thank you. And feel abundant and tell me what comes up.
Always the difficulty to even feel abundant. Like there's not even an image or something. I'm trying to think, what is an image, or what would a person personify if they would have money, right? Or if they would have that kind of money.
Okay, that's totally fine. If nothing comes up, you can just say nothing.
Okay.
And now feel fear. And tell me what comes up.
That feeling in my chest area.
Thank you. And feel abundant as best as you can and tell me what comes up.
Lightness.
Thank you. And now feel both at the same time. Feel the fear and abundant feeling at the same time, or just be aware of both at the same time. And as you do, take a deep breath in and out. And now check in again. Can you feel the fear separate from abundance? Or no?
No.
Okay. So now when you think about making 40K a month, what emotion comes up?
Excitement.
Okay, great. And what happened to that fear of not being good enough?
It's not really there anymore.
Okay, awesome. We're done.
Okay, interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more what you did there?
Sure. So this process, it's like the simplest process. It's called the universal process, and it works really well to remove charge. So what we're doing essentially is just feeling into these emotions, and that alone is going to help you clear them. Just taking the time, like we hear spiritual teachers talk about, like acceptance, being present, letting go, surrendering. They're just talking about this idea of when we feel charge coming up, when we feel uncomfortable thoughts, emotions come up, we just accept them, we embrace them, we feel into them instead of pushing them away, ignoring them, resisting them. And that's what we're doing by feeling X and then saying something about it. So when you say something about it, you're basically making that, you're just ensuring that you feel that feeling. You're confirming that, okay, I felt this fear and it shows up as this feeling in my stomach, or it shows up as this thought or mental image, and saying it out loud just verifies that you felt it. So that's enough to just reduce the charge, but that can take some time. It could take a while sometimes. So the reason we alternate with a positive side or preferred emotion is to make that process faster. So the example I like to give is I just moved into my house 3 months ago. And when we first moved in, the for sale sign was still in the yard. Like the realtor just never picked it up, this big for sale sign. So people kept coming and like trying to see our house, thinking it was an open house, and I had to like shoo them away. So one day I decided to take the sign out myself, but I didn't realize how big and heavy it was. So when I just try to yank it out, it wouldn't come out of the dirt. So what I had to do eventually was to move it from side to side, like push it to one side and push it to the other side. And the creator of this method, Dr. Slavinsky, he came to the same conclusion. He actually saw someone like try to remove like a telephone pole out of the ground, and then they had to move it back and forth. And what that does is basically it just shakes this charge loose. So by comparing it against the opposite polarity, so that you can release it faster.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so what is the idea behind feeling those two feelings at the same time? That was a very interesting process that I haven't really been like aware about before.
Yeah, actually, I don't really know the technical theory of why that what it does. I just know that, when it was tested with so many people, like that was just one of the steps, is to feel both at the same time and to breathe. But if I were to guess, I believe it's just to create kind of like how I was talking about, like the polarities just create the contrast against one another, and that's going to help release the charge faster.
And I also wonder if, one of my last thoughts through that exercise was maybe it's okay to feel both at the same time. At first I was saying to you, like when we went through it the first time, I was like, oh, I feel like I can either just feel fear or abundance. And then the second time you took me through it, I was like, it's okay to feel both. It's okay to feel fear and still be abundant,
Yeah.
Because fear is always, I feel like fear is just an emotion that's there and it can be there, but it doesn't mean that it needs to block you from actually achieving what you want to achieve.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then the end result we're looking for is they kind of merge into one, and you can't really feel fear separate from abundance. It's like, you're just like, feel abundant. I can't feel fear. I can't. That's the state we want to get to. So I'm sure if we went another couple of rounds, you would have gotten to that state. And yeah, I agree with you that emotions are nothing to be afraid of. It's they're emotions themselves aren't painful, but it's our resistance to them, our not wanting to feel them, that causes us emotional pain and suffering. So yeah, of course, it's like you can't really control a lot of times when you feel fear. And if you want to make it go away, ironically, it's just allowing yourself to feel it rather than trying to push it away.
Right. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Tony, this was so interesting and so insightful. And so, yeah, I learned so many things, and I hope the listeners did today too. How can people best connect with you if they're interested to work with you?
Yeah, people can go to my website, conscious.biz, and just reach out there. I'm not taking on new clients right now, but feel free to email me. Just to reach out, say hi, or anything at all. I'm definitely open to connecting with people. And also I'm on Instagram. So my username is Tony Wang CC. So you can find me on Instagram as well.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. And I'll make sure to obviously leave all of those links in the show notes as well, so people can easily access them. And if you've been listening to this podcast right now and you know a person that maybe is struggling with money mindset or holding in different emotions and not really facing them, make sure to share this podcast episode with them and help them in a way as well to understand themselves better and grow this consciousness. Tony, thank you so much for being here with us today. It was really a pleasure to meet you, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you, Julia. It was a lot of fun. My pleasure.